My name's Judy Singleton, and I'm the Parent Participation Advisor for the working with the forums in the East and the South East of England. We started working well over a year ago now on developing a resilience training programme for parent carer forums, as a result of parent carer forums telling us that that personal resilience around balancing forum responsibilities and parent carers' responsibilities was sometimes a challenge. And that work took place last year, and a pilot was delivered in a couple of areas, and it was rolled out so that almost all of the regions had at least one session. And so some of the presentation today reflects from some of that training, and some of it is new because we realise that the current situation we're in is something we couldn't have predicted. So at the moment, everyone is really needing to be extra resilient with all the additional stresses and uncertainties of the pandemic. So we have adapted this, which would have been a full day's training, into a short webinar for an hour. And there will be a resource handout that will also be uploaded when the recording is broadcast. So we hope you'll find some of the resources and information and links useful, and we will, yeah, as I said, I hope to answer any of your questions as we can.
Okay, good afternoon. My name's Kate. I am Vice Chair at Cheshire East Parent Care Forum, and I was one of the parents involved in co-producing the original DARE workshop and delivering the workshop. So today, what are we going to look at? We're starting off setting the scene, so the impact of COVID-19, thinking about that. We're looking at human needs and what is resilience. We're then going on to recognising stress signs, step back, learn, getting back on track, and some techniques to add to your resilience toolkit. So this is kind of a bit of a taster session for some of the tools that you'll find in the resources and the links at the end. Given the timing of this afternoon, it's not going to be long enough for you to really get your teeth into it. It is a taster, and we hope that you can find some time afterwards to go and have a look and explore with these tools a bit more afterwards. We hope that you can use this webinar as a sort of starting point to think about your own resilience, and also that it sparks some ideas about how you might share suggestions and tips about resilience with other families in your forums. So, the impact of COVID-19. Obviously, we all know the pandemic has brought new challenges for everybody. We've got challenges around logistics, getting food, medication and supplies in ways that might have once been easy have suddenly become more challenging. The issues around shielding, isolating, social distancing, keeping safe. Sharing limited spaces at home, especially for people who don't have gardens or don't have enough rooms to get away from each other. Accessing public spaces in safe ways. The economic impact. Massive impact of loneliness and isolation, people missing their families and friends, and the usual support networks and routines have been really disrupted, which is really unsettling. One huge impact has been the importance of access to the internet, and none of us would be doing this today if it weren't for the internet, and needing broadband, sharing laptops amongst various members of the family, squabbling to get a go on things. We've also got new demands around home learning, having to keep up with guidance, working from home, and lots of new decisions to make, thinking about whether or not to return to home or school, whether or not we need to wear masks and gloves, etc. Lots of issues that I haven't had to think about before. On top of this, obviously, there are some need to acknowledge that some families have had to also deal with a very, very serious illness and the pain of bereavement and all the restrictions that limit how we can find comfort in these instances. Things are changing very, very fast. Routines and services have been stopped abruptly, and it's really hard to plan ahead with so much uncertainty. We're also thinking about the additional impact of COVID-19 on parents of families of children who have SEND and additional needs. So it can be even more complex. So annual reviews and the normal processes being changed, not having respite, interruption to transport, whether or not to go back to school and the additional challenges for children with SEND, home learning not being differentiated, trying to figure that out yourself, children not understanding social distancing, young people struggling to work independently, needing to set up online therapies, more and more guidance, trying to keep the children quiet and keep on top of things, and particularly for those parents and carers who are also working or volunteering in the midst of this. There's extra things to contend with. So it's not surprising that all this juggling leaves some of us feeling a bit overwhelmed. We're going to have a think about human needs theory, which is, what do all humans need? Some of you may already be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's a theory that the most basic human needs at the bottom, that are required for survival, working your way up to growth. As parent carers, you're also often taking responsibility for the needs of your children and young people as well as your own. So starting from the bottom, the most basic human needs are physiological. So things like breathing and food and water and sleep, medication. The current situation has suddenly meant that many people who don't usually have to think about these needs are suddenly forced to be very aware of them, and the anxieties around whether or not they could be met. And at worst, not having these needs met could lead to death or severe illness. And then working way up, we've then got safety and security, which includes things like feeling physically safe in your environment. It includes feeling healthy. It includes knowing that you've got enough money and supplies to keep you alive and well. The sudden presence of a potentially fatal virus in our communities has made many of us feel very unsafe, especially those who are more vulnerable because of health conditions or their ethnicity or their jobs. And similarly, the economic impact means that many parents and many families are facing real financial insecurity. Not having this safety and security can have a real impact. It can lead to mental illness, to stress, to anxiety, to trauma. Continuing up, love and belonging. So people need to feel love from their friends, their families, partners and community. And they have a need to build lasting social connections. And as we've talked about, interactions with our friends, family and community has all had to change very, very suddenly. Not having these needs met can again have real serious consequences. It can lead to depression, anxiety, stress. Continuing up, esteem recognises the need to feel confident in yourself and feel like others think that you matter. We need to feel appreciated and respected, whether it's work, school, hobbies, other areas, and get a sense that we're making a contribution. Now, COVID has meant that many people have seen their routines and their purpose change really suddenly. So people who felt confident and in control suddenly find themselves thrown into trying to juggle home learning and working from home and trying to get online groceries and other challenges that suddenly they're left feeling out of their depth and incompetent. Continuing up the pyramid in the growth section, you've got fulfill your potential. It's the last level of the needs, is also called self-actualization. This level means that people need to feel like they're reaching their goals and becoming the person that they want to be. It's about sort of happiness and personal growth. Not having love and belonging, esteem and fulfillment can make people stressed and anxious and depressed. Okay, so we've talked about the impact of COVID-19 and the additional ways that parent carers can be affected. And we've talked a little bit about human needs and why it's so important for your health and well-being that these needs can be met. We're now moving on to start thinking about resilience and how resilience can help you during COVID-19. Individual resilience embodies both emotional and physical resilience. It's the rubber ball factor, the ability to bounce back no matter what life throws at you. It's the ability to cope with stress, challenges, problems and setbacks that you meet in your life. Resilient people use their strengths and support systems to overcome challenges and work through problems. They help you pick yourself up and carry on. Now, resilience doesn't mean that you're invincible or that you can take everything on the chin without flinching. It doesn't mean you don't experience stress, emotional upheaval or suffering. And it's important because it gives people the strength needed to process or overcome the hardship. People who don't have resilience can get overwhelmed and may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Resilience helps us cope with life's challenges. An inevitable part of dealing with change, of life is dealing with change, stress, and difficulties. At some point in life, everyone experiences varying degrees of stress, of setbacks. Some of these challenges might be relatively small, while others can be disastrous and on a much bigger scale. How we manage or deal with these life challenges or problems can impact on our own health and well-being. So basically, we all have stuff to deal with. Some challenges are small and others are big and life-changing, and some are very stressful. As stuff builds up, it can build stress, and too much stress can build overload and burnout. And as your stress increases, your resilience decreases. So everyone is different. And in the current pandemic, it's easy to see how people can become overloaded and reach burnout. Long-term chronic stress can be damaging to physical and mental well-being if it isn't understood and addressed. So having a look at recognizing signs of stress. Stress can affect all aspects of your life. No part of the body is immune, but because people handle stress very differently, symptoms can vary. Sometimes they're really obvious, sometimes they're more subtle. Stress affects everyone in different ways. So we're going to have a look at some of the different cognitive, emotional, physical, and behavioural signs of stress. On the next two slides, we're going to look at lists of some of the different signs of stress. And what we're asking you to do is have a look through the lists and see if you can identify your own signs of stress, as well as maybe your family members, people who you're close to. Being aware of how it feels and looks can help you to look out for and recognise when things are becoming too much. And after we've gone through these slides, we'll be picking up any questions or comments so far. We won't have time to spend ages on this, but it might be something that you want to go back to when the slides are uploaded so that you can get your highlighter out and have a look what there is. So, signs of stress, starting with cognitive signs. Memory problems, worrying, forgetfulness, disorganization, inability to concentrate, pessimism, self-doubt. So thinking as you look through these what you might recognize in yourself or from people close to you. What might other people notice about you when you're stressed? And next we're going to have a look at emotional signs of stress. Some again more obvious, some less so. So depression, moodiness, irritability, panic, cynicism, anxiety, overwhelm, losing control, tearfulness, aggression, impatience, difficulty relaxing or calming, fear, low self-esteem and worthlessness. So what do you notice and what do others notice about you when you're stressed, and what do you notice about them? Having a think about during the current situation in the last few months, what sort of things do you recognize from yourself over that time? Low energy, constant tiredness, insomnia, frequent colds, skin complaints, panic attacks, clenched jaw, grinding teeth, shallow breathing, nervousness. And the last category we've got is behavioural signs. Increased intake of alcohol, not saying anything over the last few months, chocolate, isolating yourself from others, sleeping too little or too much, demotivated, losing a sense of humour, lack of creativity, eating too much or too little, fidgeting. So if you're not sure as you go through here, it might be worth, as I say, taking some time after the webinar when the slides are uploaded, and you can ask others around you what they notice. So Julie, are there any questions so far?
No, I haven't had any questions yet, but I'm sure people are thinking about what the slides are, have been sort of highlighting and trying to identify things that they can recognise, I would imagine. But we do have other opportunities further along if people, you know, think of questions to kind of still raise them. I just wanted to say that quite a few years ago now, because I've been at Contact for quite a long time, we used to deliver training on behaviour and sleep and stress, and all of the things that have been mentioned in today's webinar are kind of things that parents had highlighted in those training sessions themselves. So I think those signs of stress are kind of quite common for quite a lot of people. I definitely hear you about the certainly the chocolate and the chocolate and the unhealthy eating, maybe.
Yes. Okay, we'll keep going then. So what happens when you start feeling all these signs of stress? Once you've noticed that you're stressed, what to do next? Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. We all know this, and we're all probably really, really quick to jump in and reassure others about the importance of self-care and being kind to yourself. Remember, you are not much use to anyone if you're running on empty, not to yourself or to your family, let alone any other volunteers or other families. When you notice your stress signs are building up, you do need to stop. Take a step back from the overwhelm. Give yourself permission to take time and assess your situation so that you are able to bounce back later. You might have a walk, have a bath, let the kids off home learning so that you can have a Netflix binge, whatever works for you. I think top tip to remember is it's often worth thinking about what you would say to another parent if they told you they were feeling like you are. You probably give really, really good advice to others, and it's worth listening to yourself. We aren't looking at self-care today, but in the resources and the links at the end of the webinar in the slides, and that you'll see when this gets shared later on, there are lots of links there. It could be a whole other webinar on self-care. We all know that we should be eating balanced meals and drinking plenty of water and trying to keep active and getting lots of rest. And it's worth remembering that within individual resilience, we've got emotional resilience, but we also have physical resilience. Now, this slide is just some quick ways to try and snap out of it if you're feeling your stress signs building up, they're creeping up on you, some techniques to try and stop them in their tracks and regain control. And this was originally thinking about on your own, when you don't need to worry about what you look like. You might want to dance or shake your arms around or go for a quick walk, jump or bounce, have a bath, lie down. And then in company, we were thinking about originally in meetings. So it might be on Zoom now. What can you do? Mute the conversation. But some physical techniques to just break the state you're in, to move from if you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed or intense, it helps you to snap out of it and gain some control so that you can then move on. So give yourself time. We talked about being kind to yourself and stepping back. We do need to give yourself time to get over stressful or difficult situations. How you feel about a situation is one thing, and what we do about it and how we respond is another. You may need to take a bit of time to wallow and to recover, and that's okay. Don't rush, but try not to fester. Eventually, for our own sake, we need to move on. In order to be resilient, it's important to learn from the experience and assess what's happened and what changes you can make so that you can bounce back stronger. So positive thinking skills, taking time out, mindfulness, exercise, all help. And we're going to look at some more tools and techniques that can help you do this. And as I say, there will be links at the end for you to read up and more approaches at the end of the webinar. So the challenge: finding and maintaining balance, taking time for yourself, laundry, thinking and reflecting, fun, laughter and relaxation, and sleep. Doesn't that sound brilliant? We'd wish. We're very, very aware that this is easier said than done, particularly at the moment, and it may take some creativity and some new approaches. We don't have a magic wand to make the laundry go away or other housework, so we do still need to make time for this, but it's worth aiming for it. This is the challenge, is to try and work towards this. It's not a quick process. It's not something certainly that we can complete in a 1-hour webinar. But it's something to work towards, and it's an ongoing process. So it's not do it once and it's done. It's something you'll keep revisiting. Thinking back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Are you able to meet the basic physiological needs? Do you have security, love and esteem? Are you able to fulfill your potential? Probably not at the moment. But understanding these needs and identifying where they're not met can help you work out your way forward. Also, in the links at the end of the webinar, in the resource that's being put together, you will find links to a tool called the Wheel of Life, which is a way to to look at the balance of your life, whether you're spending your time and energy on things that give you satisfaction. You'll also find a tool called goal setting, which helps you address any imbalance you identify. So it works through having looked at the balance of your life and identified, actually, I want to spend a bit more time on family or fun or whatever it might be, to then work towards that. And it gives you a structure to think through. It helps with identifying areas that you need to work on. And it's a very powerful step towards finding better balance and increasing your resilience. So one way of moving from the sort of wallowing stage to the moving on stage is be kind to you. Your own voice is the one you hear the most. Listen to how you're talking to yourself. Are you being fair? Would you say that to anybody else? Is it helpful, what you're saying? And also briefly touch on thinking blockers and open thinking. Thinking about the language that you're using. And it's really interesting that people who are feeling very low, depressed, anxious will use much more negative words. There's a guilt and there's a feeling like you're not getting stuff done and the oppression of it. So some words cut off thinking, others can free it up. And some of these words on the left are thinking blockers. It flags up that it's someone's belief about something, unless it's the law, in which case it is a should or a must. And it's the way they've come to think about something, but it's not the same for everyone, and it can stifle creative thinking. Moving from should to could and must to may can allow you to think more creatively. Another useful tool when it is time to move on from wallowing to moving on is to use some questions to try and look at the situation differently. Firstly is perspective. How big really is this problem? You can try putting it on a scale of 1 to 10. You could ask yourself, will it actually matter in 6 months' time, in a year's time, in a week's time? How urgent is it that you tackle this right now? Proportional. So how big is your reaction? Is it appropriate for the scale of your problem? Are you overreacting, or is it helping? It may be that, yes, actually, your response is entirely proportional. It could be that you're struggling with something really, really big and you need to get some help, and recognizing that this is reasonable, I'm not being silly, I need to do something about this, is a step down the route to moving on. It may be that you say, actually, do you know what, I've stepped back and looked at this and it's not that big a deal, I can find another way to do it. So stepping back and checking yourself. Next is the possible, is this something that I can actually change? How much can I change this? Is this in my control? Is it something that I can't really have much impact on? On the next slide, we're going to have a look at a tool called the circle of control, which is a way to focus on the issue that you're thinking about and try and identify what can you change and what can't you change as a way of using your energy. And lastly on the list, we have potential. So what can you learn from this? What might you do differently next time round? Is there anything you can do to avoid there even being a next time round? Can you find any positives? For example, you might use your experience to help others who find themselves in the same situation. Obviously, it's a bit happy-clappy to expect everybody to find the positive straight away when you're in the middle of things. So this is a process when you look back on something. Okay, so I talked about the circle of control, and it's another really useful tool which can help you stand back and look at a situation. I don't know if you can think of a situation that you might be dealing with at the moment or at some point during this last few months of lockdown, or something that somebody close to you might be dealing with. thinking about breaking down what aspects are actually in your direct control, what aspects you can influence, but they're outside your direct control, and then those aspects that are completely beyond your control. Using this tool can help you make sure you're spending your energy where you can actually make a difference. So for an example, if you were feeling really stressed or angry about seeing crowds of people gathering on the beach when you're sitting obediently at home, you might recognize that you can make your own decisions about where you go and what you do. And you might be able to influence decisions of people that you know or who are close to you about their choices by explaining your concerns. But you cannot control everyone, and you don't know the reasons for their choices. You can't control the virus. You can't control limited influence on government policy and others' response to it. But you do have the ability to directly decide what's right for you. And sometimes that can help you let go of some of the things that are stressing. This next tool is to look through your support network, your network of support. And we're aware from discussions about this that for quite a few people, their network of support may have changed significantly because of the restrictions and the change to routine, and how you're able to interact with your network of support. Another exercise to do is to sit down and look through this list of your network of support. So an objective person, somebody who's outside of the situation who can give you straight advice, someone who's able to give you advice on professional development and support you with that, emotional support, group support, family and friends. And within your family and friends, you'll have the person who's the good listener, the person who nods and says, yes, poor you, when that's what you need, the person who helps you solve a problem, the person who will call you out when you need to be challenged on what you're thinking. You have friends online or support online, and I know a lot of our groups have really good chat and hive mind to come up with solutions when people are feeling overwhelmed. People who you go to for positivity and just a bit of silliness, and people who are good fun. So maybe if you're listening to this later on, you can pause at this point and go through the exercise. If you're listening to this right now, then think about it later, maybe go back to the slides. And again, it might be something to take your highlighter out and think about who is it that you have, and are there gaps in your network of support where you need to get more support. Try and identify who it is that you go to for each of these areas, and maybe whether this has changed as the result of lockdown at all. Okay, Julie, have we got any questions at this point? Is there any comments or chat?
Yes, we do. We have a question from someone who said that somebody in their steering group is having an awful time, he's very stressed and exhausted, and how can we support them whilst maintaining a balance in our own lives? I guess I'll come to you after, Kate, but I guess I was thinking that there might be things that, you know, people could do, just like being kind and asking if there is any way that person feels that anyone could help them, which is really practical and basic. And it may be that person just wants to think things through themselves and doesn't really want support, or it could be that the referring back to what you were saying before. So for example, if somebody used to have a carer coming in to support them with their child and the carer can't come in any longer, I mean, that isn't something that may change straight away, but it might be worth that, you know, then that person who's experiencing that to find out what services are still available. I think the other thing to think about is as well is for this year, Contact was able to set up a sort of a forum support contract for this year for 8 members who are steering group members or parent reps actively involved in their forums to be able to access online counselling and support. And I think that might be, I think an email went out to forums in the last month or so to tell them how to go about doing that and how you can access that. And I am aware that, you know, there may be options to buy additional places if more than 8 people could benefit from it. Something else I was going to mention later on, which might be useful to mention now, is Contact does have a helpline for parents, but a recent development, actually I think it was really only launched yesterday, was that parents can now book online for a one-to-one listening and support service with the helpline. So you can go onto the website and you can actually book in online a session with one of the helpline advisors and talk through any issues, challenges, or just to kind of say to someone, I'm really not coping, I'm not, you know, things aren't going well. And they can be a listening ear, and they can also, you know, signpost you to maybe more specific and relevant services that might be useful. We had another question, which was, yes, the webinar is definitely going to be recorded, and we will have a Q&A of any questions we couldn't answer or ones that require a bit more thought. And also we will have a handout resource with more links and some more tools to look at and think about as well. Over to you, Kate, I think, if you've got any other ideas.
I was going to add, as Julie says, that the webinar will be recorded and all the slides will be available. So I'm aware, because it would take so much longer to actually use these tools we're going through and explaining them, but if you watch it back, you'll be able to pause and do the exercises maybe as you go through and use what feels like it's what you need. Going back to the question about the steering group member who's feeling very stressed. My first answer would be that you need to be realistic about your own capacity to support them. And I think some of the advice is about saying, this is how much I can give without it then having an impact on me. And if that's about listening and supporting, but also signposting and really encouraging them that it's okay to ask for support. It's all right to not be okay, and that they need support, and to be really open about that and support them in that. And part of that is about recognizing your own limits and saying, I'm really overwhelmed this week maybe, but I've got time next week. Shall we have a chat? Shall we have a half-hour catch up? Here's some contacts that you might be able to look at for support in the meantime. Julie, I can see another couple of questions. Do you want to do those now? We leave questions to the end.
Yes, can do, yes. It says, would it be possible to send out a flyer with Contact's helpline telephone number on for me to share with forum members and place on social media? I think I'm not sure we've still got any flyers in print. I'm not sure, but we do have, certainly we can send the helpline number. We can email people. So if somebody wants to email us in, and I think also the resource handout that's being put together to accompany this also has the details of the helpline number. So I think that will signpost you to the right place as well.
And I have seen a post on Facebook either yesterday or today with the details of the helpline. So on the Contact Families page, it's there if you need to share it from there.
Sorry, it was just somebody else has just said, sorry, I missed who you said was offering the bookable phone call. It is actually Contact Helpline, and the information should be on the resource, and it's also currently on our website and on our social media as well.
So 10 tips for staying strong during COVID-19. First one is just say no. It's know your limits and stick to them. It is okay to say things like, I've got a lot on this week already and I need to make sure I have time and energy to spend with my family, so I won't fit that in too. In fact, it's also okay just to say, no, I'm not able to do that. I'm not going to do that. The second top tip is to plan your time and think about the balance. And we talked earlier about some of the tools for looking at the balance. Make sure there are things that you enjoy. And I'm not being unrealistic. I understand, as I say, the laundry is not going to go to nowhere. We can't always get away. But it's picking your battles and crossing things off your to-do list if they don't matter. Give yourself a break. You don't need to read every single article, home learning link and government update yourself. There's so much swirling around that it can make you feel really bombarded. Notice what's stressing you out and try and look for creative ways to avoid the things that trigger them. And some of them you're not going to be able to avoid. those that you can reduce the amount of stress. So if you notice that spending 20 minutes on Twitter leaves you feeling angry, or the home learning group on Facebook makes you feel like you're failing, then switch it off. Leave the group, or at least mute it for 30 days until you're feeling more robust. I know a lot of people who've had to take time away from social media during the recent months. If you know that a particular person winds you up and you can limit the amount of time that you spend with them, then do that. Take control of your environment. So if trips to the shop are really difficult, can you shop online instead? Can you do click and collect? You do you. So thinking back to the circles of control, use your energy where it's most effective. People are always going to make different choices to you, and I think at the moment with anxieties so high, it's very easy to find that stressful. Remember that you don't know others' full circumstances and they don't know yours. If you have limited energy, as often we are, then using that where it's most effective. Fact check. There is a lot of information out there. Make sure you're checking and using valid sources from like Government UK or the NHS or WHO or Contact. And again, links in the slides at the end. It's important to stay connected. It's very easy to become isolated and lonely at the moment. Phone calls, online, everybody's Zooming now. Now we can go out for walks together, picnics, meeting in people's gardens. I'd also add the proviso in that if you're in a house full of people and there's lots of noise and manic, it's also important to allow yourself to shut it all off if you need it. Reach out. So this is just a reminder that resilience isn't being invincible. It's using the support available. It's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to ask for help. Use the advice that you would give to other parents. Use resources, information, helplines. Be positive. Again, easier said than done, I know, but there is a lot of evidence about the benefit of gratitude as a daily habit. Now, it doesn't have to be, I am grateful for big almighty things. It could be, I am grateful for cheese because I've had a really lovely sandwich. It's just small things that you're noticing that has been nice or good or fun. Look at solutions if something's gone wrong, to try and find a more positive way to look at things. So we were talking earlier about changing your perspective. If something goes terribly wrong later on, can you stand back? Can you learn from it? Can you help others? Try to focus on the 5 things that went well rather than the one that didn't in a day. Okay, take care of your body. So mostly we've been talking about emotional resilience, but physical resilience matters too. As Snickers tells us, you're not you when you're hungry. I know myself, when I'm tired, I'm much more irritable. I have so little tolerance. I'm not in the mood for anybody saying anything that isn't right. And all I need to do is go to bed. We all know that you need to eat well, drink lots of water, keep active and rest. But it's easy to push it down the to-do list. And the 10th tip is give permission. And by that we're meaning give yourself permission to prioritize yourself. You can say no. You can make time for having fun. You can go to bed early. You can ask for help. Take the advice that you would give to other people. And if you can't think of what that advice would be, maybe find the person in your support network who'll help you find it. And if you find yourself feeling guilty about taking time, doing things for yourself, then remember, as an added bonus, you're also setting an example to others around you that it's okay to step back and to take a break. And by doing it, you're giving them permission too. Okay, so kind of summarizing what we've talked about, personal resilience skills and qualities include self-awareness, so noticing your emotions, your thinking, your behavior, your stress signs, the circle of control, what we can do and what we can influence and what we can't. Accurate thinking, understanding the difference between fact and perception, being able to stand back from something after you've wallowed, stand back and try and look objectively. How big is the problem? How urgent is the problem? How proportional is my response? What can I do about it? So thinking objectively. Having the confidence to problem solve, and I think parent carers are well used to this. We become solution focused. Don't fix the blame, fix the problem. So it's trying to find ways to get on with it, make it better. And lastly, importantly, reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Use the support available to you. So in the skills we've looked at, obviously in an hour-long webinar, or possibly slightly shorter than that, you're very likely to have real life going around you whilst you've all been listening. It's not going to be a magic wand, but it's a starting point, and it's an introduction to some tools and ways of thinking that can help bolster your own resilience. Now, having started this process of thinking about resilience and about what challenges it and about how you can build your resilience, the next question we have for you is, can you think of ways to help others increase their own resilience? I'd be interested if we've got any suggestions, thoughts on that. And some of the things we thought about in advance, Julie, we were talking about noticing other stress signs, maybe using that exercise we did earlier so that you can pick up on people when they're starting to get stressed, but before it reaches a point where they're losing that. And Julie, were there any other suggestions or questions that we got sent through for how we can help others increase their own resilience?
No, we had one that was asking about, we have a question which says, I'm taking on everyone's issues, and how can I stop when it's who I am? And then I've got another one which is implement a model of good boundaries so others feel able to do the same and listen and be there for them. So one was a question and two were comments, really.
Right.
So
and it seems to me,
sorry, carry on.
It seems to me that actually the first suggestion to implement and model good boundaries so others feel able to do the same, that's sort of part of the answer to the taking on everyone's issues. I think if you know that you do take everyone's issues on and you recognize that that is who you are, and I would say that from my involvement in parent carer forums, that's a very common thing, and people who are choosing to give their time to be involved in this way are often prone to taking on others' problems and trying to fix it. But if you know that, then maybe you could set specific time limits on how long you can spend trying to support other people, and recognize your own needs and your family's needs come first, and not feeling guilty about that and saying, I would really like to help you, but actually the most effective way to help would be maybe for them to find ways to help themselves, or to signpost them to different professional services that can help support them there. Like, listen and be there for them's definitely part of it.
Thank
Be
you.
emotionally intelligent to protect yourself. Absolutely. And I think a lot of the resources that we're looking at are about building your emotional intelligence so that you can do that. Signposting actually is a really powerful way to increase others' resilience, and I think that that's something a lot of forums do and a lot of parents do for each other. There's a lot of signposting to the right place to get support. And there's also Tuesday's webinar, which was on reducing isolation and promoting well-being, had some good ways to let people know that you're there and you're part of their network of support. Okay. Move on to the resources and further information, Julie.
I will, but I've just seen another question come in, which is, how do you cope living in a household where the other parent is not contributing? And there is, I'm trying to see the rest of it. I don't know if you can see the rest of it, can you?
One parent supporting the needs of the child.
Yes.
Yes. I suppose the tools, in terms of what we've looked at, the tools are about the circle of control and focusing on what you can change and what you can't change, and whether or not that's something you can change or not, and recognizing how big it is or not, and how proportional your response is or not. And it sounds like there's huge demands on the one parent who is supporting the needs of the child. I think we maybe need to think about where we can signpost for that, don't we?
Certainly. I think I'd also I know I'm going to come on soon to lots of resources and information. I'll mention it at that point, actually, because Contact has got some really good stuff around information for things like grandparents and siblings and partners and things like that, to kind of get you working together to kind of make sure that everything's ticking over and going as it should be, and hopefully that there isn't one person just doing everything. So I appreciate grandparents can't always be around at this moment in time, but the resource is still quite useful. So definitely I'll tell you where to find them.
I would also encourage, because I think there aren't easy answers, and these tools aren't easy answers. They're not a quick fix, but it is, even if it's quite uncomfortable at times, and sometimes it will be because you're trying to address a problem. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's worth spending that time so you can be clear on what you can change, what you want to change, and where the issues lie. So I really would recommend using the resources that will be shared with the webinar to identify what's the balance, what's the imbalance, what can you change, how can you change it. Okay.
Thanks,
Julia.
Kate. Thank you. So this is the bit where we kind of look at some of the resources that you might find useful, or some of the websites you might find useful. And I'm going to start off with some things that Contact is doing and has done recently. So last week there was a very forum focused webinar called Adapted to COVID-19, and it was presented by Ruth Hobbs, who's from Somerset Parent Care Forum. And it was looking at the different ways in which some forums are thinking of adapting how they deliver their support and engagement to families. So that was a really good one, but it was quite forum focused. And then we have a whole host of other webinars that are also on our website, and we'll have all the links, and the links are up there. But they include all the past ones that we've had on a range of different subjects. Some of them are very forum focused, some of them are more specific around health or EHCPs. But anyway, there's a lot of things there you can look at. Also recently there was a live web chat with Rotherham Forum and the DfE about how Rotherham have been adapting their approach. So that is again forum focused. But why I'm mentioning those things are because they do have a big impact on the parents that forums are working with. They do help them to still maintain that relationship and still offer that support and that kind of listening ear that they are more and more being able needing to do at the moment, because that's where people's thoughts are at the moment, is about how they're managing. So the other thing is that Contact has a COVID information on a particular part of the website, and I've listed it there, and it's www.contact.org.uk advice and support /COVID-19, and it's got loads of really good stuff on there. It's got health information, the latest government guidelines. It has stuff on there about if you're having difficulties accessing food deliveries and accessing food supplies. There's a whole range of really useful things on there which people might find helpful. Contact also has part of the website which has got wellbeing pages. It's got one on family life, which I mentioned just before, and it has information on family relationships, sleep behaviour, supporting siblings, on stress, and a whole lot of things, and that's really worth taking a look at. Contact do have some workshops in different places throughout the country, which I think most of them are going online, obviously, but there are some wellbeing workshops taking place in Cheshire, West and Chester, I believe. There's also a resource called a website called Sumo Guy, and it has lots of resources and training on resilience, and certainly worth looking at. Ways of Wellbeing you might find on Mind website, and that's looking at lots of different ways to maintain your mental well-being. And Family Lives is a support, advice and training organisation, and they also have a really great helpline with telephone counsellors. And why I mention them is because although Contact does have a helpline, and we always suggest people go there, at Christmas and on bank holidays, the Family Lives helpline is usually available. Used to be 24 hours, so it might be worth checking them out to see if you can reach them if you can't reach Contact. The other thing that I've been signposting people to recently is the Young Minds website. If parents have got children that are struggling at the moment, or are really anxious or anything like that, and it's a really great source of information and advice. And we also have that there's a healthy parent carers project that's being done with, I think, Exeter University, and they have a film which I put the link up to about talking to the parent carers that have been involved in that project. And also the NHS has some information on stress and anxiety that it's really, really worth looking at. So I would definitely recommend that too. I didn't add this because I didn't know whether to say it or not, but there's also an organisation called Papyrus, and I am aware, and that is around support for young people who might be feeling suicidal, and I think some people may feel that that might be useful checking their website out if they're worried about a young person. But I haven't put it on the slide, but if anyone was interested, I can add the link. And we can share it later on. Have we got any more questions or comments? I haven't been able to.
I've just seen some comments about the fear of the unknown, and it's difficult at present as many people's emotions are unstable. And I would absolutely agree with that. And I think the important thing to say is to recognise that. And we talked about being kind to yourself, and you can't pour from an empty cup. And however many times people say it's true, and you do have permission, if it's not the right time to try to move on and start finding the solutions, if you're still in coping mode, that's fine. I think it's not feeling pressure that you need to rush. It's about when you're ready to move on, then starting to use these tools. And it may be that looking at what the balance is and what the what's missing, then that might actually be a useful, helpful way. But that's all the comments and the questions that we have there, Julie.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much for that. So I'll leave it about 30 seconds or so to see if anyone else has got any comments or suggestions, and see how we get on. While we're doing that, I'll just say thank you for attending the webinar with us today. When the webinar's finished, there'll be a short questionnaire at the end, so please take time to have a look at it and feedback if you can. We're also asking if you've got any ideas for future webinars that we might find helpful when we're planning the programme. The recording of this webinar and presentation will be available in Contact's website probably next week, but definitely in the next 2 weeks, along with any resources and any Q&As of any questions that's been asked. And I would say do look at Contact's social media web pages, and certainly there is, in the last month, we've launched a Facebook page that's for any parent carers, so not specifically ones that belong to forums. So if you just want to link in and network with other parent carers to talk about the issues that you're facing or common issues, then have a look at that. It's worth looking at. Is there any more questions? No? Okay.
No, I think we're done. I think that's all of them. So I'll say a big thank you from me. I do know that finding an hour's peace and quiet to sit and take part in something like this is not always easy. So thank you very much. I hope you found it useful, and I hope that you can find some time to look back over the resources when we're sharing them.
And thank you from me too. Thanks. Bye, everyone.